Hello guys, welcome to Petals of Revenge, where karma blooms in the most unexpected ways. Today's story will shake you to your core. It's about betrayal, survival, and the sweetest revenge you've ever heard. If this story moves you, please like, subscribe, share, and let me know in the comments what you would have done in my shoes. I never thought my own blood would leave me stranded like garbage at an airport gate. But that's exactly what happened on what should have been just another Tuesday in March. My name is Isabel Ramirez, and at 24 years old, I learned the hardest lesson of my life: family loyalty is just a pretty lie some people tell themselves. The morning started like any other disaster in my life had been starting lately. Lucas, my 6-month-old baby boy, had been crying since 4 a.m., his little face red and scrunched with what I suspected was another ear infection. I'd been up all night, walking the small apartment floor, bouncing him gently, whispering every lullaby I could remember from my own childhood. The irony wasn't lost on me, singing the same songs my mother once sang to me, while she prepared to abandon me in the cruelest way possible. My phone had been buzzing with messages from my younger sister Camila all week. At 21, she'd somehow managed to build what she called a brand on social media. Thousands of followers hung on her every perfectly filtered word, watching her showcase products, share her daily routines, and paint this picture of glamorous young adulthood that felt as fake as her spray tan. But it was working. Companies were paying her to travel, to stay in fancy hotels, to pretend their products had changed her life. "Isabel, you have to come see me off at the airport," she'd texted the night before. "This trip to Miami is going to be huge for my career. The brand wants family content, showing how supportive everyone is. Just bring Lucas, babies get so many likes." Even through my exhaustion, something about that message made my stomach turn. Babies get so many likes. Not, "I'd love to see my nephew before I leave," or "I want my family there because I'll miss you." No, it was about content. About engagement. About turning my son into a prop for her online performance. But I was desperate for any connection to my family, even one built on such shallow ground. Since Lucas's father had walked out the day I told him I was pregnant, since I'd lost my job 3 months into my pregnancy due to restructuring that seemed suspiciously timed, since I'd been scraping by on odd jobs and what little help my parents occasionally provided, I'd been clinging to any thread that connected me to something bigger than the 4 walls of my tiny apartment and the endless cycle of diapers, bottles, and sleepless nights. So I agreed. I'd take Lucas to the airport, smile for Camila's camera, play the role of the supportive big sister, and maybe, just maybe, feel like I belonged somewhere again, even if it was just for a few hours in an airport terminal. I should have known better. I should have recognized the signs that had been building for months. The way conversations would shift when I entered a room. The way my parents would suddenly find reasons to cut phone calls short when I started talking about my struggles. The way Camila would post about toxic family members and choosing your own path right after I'd asked for help with groceries or babysitting. But hope makes you stupid sometimes. It makes you ignore red flags that are waving so hard they could power a small city. It makes you dress up your baby in his cutest outfit, pack his diaper bag with extra care, and take 2 buses and a train to get to an airport where you're about to learn exactly how little you mean to the people who share your DNA. The terminal was buzzing with its usual chaos when I arrived. Travelers rushing past with their rolling suitcases, the constant announcements echoing overhead, the smell of overpriced coffee and fast food mixing into that distinctly airport atmosphere that manages to be both energizing and exhausting at the same time. Lucas was fussing in his carrier, overwhelmed by all the noise and movement, and I was already feeling that familiar anxiety creeping up my spine, the constant worry that everyone was judging me, that I looked too young, too unprepared, too much like someone who didn't have her life together. I spotted them before they saw me. My parents, Maria and Carlos Ramirez, were standing near the departure board with Camila, who was posing for what I assumed was an Instagram story. Even from a distance, I could see the performance of it all. Camila's perfectly styled hair catching the artificial light, her outfit clearly chosen for maximum visual impact, her smile bright and practiced. Mom was holding Camila's phone, capturing different angles while Dad stood nearby with Camila's designer luggage, bags that probably cost more than I'd made in the past 3 months. For just a moment, watching them from across the terminal, I felt a stab of something that might have been envy but was really closer to grief. Grief for the family I thought I had, for the support I thought I could count on, for the life I'd imagined before everything fell apart. They looked like a magazine ad for family success, well-dressed, confident, completely absorbed in their shared mission of launching Camila's career into the stratosphere. Then Camila spotted me. Her face lit up with that same practiced smile she wore in her videos, and she waved me over with enthusiasm that felt just a little too bright, a little too performed. "Isabel. You made it. Oh my God, Lucas looks so cute. This is going to be perfect content." Perfect content. Even her greeting was about the image we create together, not about seeing me or meeting her nephew. But I pushed down the disappointment and walked over, adjusting Lucas in his carrier and trying to summon a smile that wouldn't look forced in whatever video she was planning to make. "Hey, family," I said, and immediately regretted how desperate I sounded for their attention, their approval, their acknowledgement that I existed and mattered. Mom kissed my cheek in that absent way she'd perfected over the past year, the kind of affection that looks right from the outside but carries no real warmth. Dad nodded at me and immediately turned his attention to Lucas, making those exaggerated faces people make at babies when they don't really know how to interact with them but want to appear interested. "He's gotten so big," Mom said, though she made no move to actually hold him or engage with him beyond the obligatory comment. "How are you managing everything?" The question felt like a trap. If I said I was fine, I'd be lying, and they'd use my apparent success as an excuse to offer even less help. If I admitted I was struggling, I'd be confirming whatever narrative they'd already constructed about my poor choices and inability to handle my responsibilities. So I went with something in between, something that acknowledged difficulty without sounding like a complete plea for help. "It's challenging, but we're figuring it out," I said. "Some days are harder than others, but Lucas is worth all of it." "That's so inspiring," Camila said, and I could practically see her mental notes forming for future social media posts about overcoming adversity and finding strength in motherhood. Everything was content to her, even my genuine struggles. "You're like, such a strong mom. I should do a whole series about young mothers and empowerment." Before I could respond to being turned into a case study for her brand, an announcement crackled over the airport speakers. "Attention passengers on Flight 447 to Miami. Due to mechanical issues, this flight has been cancelled. Passengers should report to the customer service desk for rebooking options." The words hit the little group like a physical blow. Camila's practiced composure cracked immediately, her face cycling through disbelief, frustration, and something approaching panic. This wasn't just an inconvenience, this was a threat to her carefully orchestrated career moment. "No, no, no," she said, pulling out her phone and immediately starting to type frantically. "I have meetings tomorrow. I have content shoots scheduled. The brand is expecting me to document the whole trip. This cannot be happening right now." Dad was already pulling out his own phone, presumably to start making calls to see if he could fix this somehow. Mom was rubbing Camila's arm in comfort, murmuring reassurances about how they'd figure it out, how important this trip was, how they wouldn't let anything derail her big opportunity. And I stood there, holding my fussy baby, watching my family rally around Camila's crisis while I remained invisible on the periphery of their concern. It was such a perfect metaphor for how things had been going that I almost laughed. "Almost. Maybe there's another flight today," I suggested, trying to be helpful, trying to contribute something useful to the conversation. "I already checked," Dad said without looking up from his phone. "Next available flight isn't until Thursday, and that's cutting it too close for Camila's schedule. I'm calling the airline directly to see what they can do for important passengers." Important passengers. not passengers with important needs or urgent